Right now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to figure out how to respond to Iran's attack. It's a really delicate calculation of responding in a way to not look weak while also trying to avoid alienating the Biden administration and other allies impatient with Israel's war in Gaza. Alex Traiman is the CEO of the Jewish News Syndicate, an award-winning documentary filmmaker, joining us now to talk about the latest developments. Thank you, as always. All sides must show restraint. That is from the British Prime Minister talking about how Israel responds here. What are the scenarios you're hearing being discussed?
Thanks so much, Marnie. Israel's keeping its cards pretty close to its chest right now, stating that it will respond in the time and place of its choosing. There's definitely a feeling here in Israel that they understand that while the international community doesn't want to see an escalation, that we are in a very serious escalation. We have been in a serious escalation for the past 6 months, and that the missiles, the ballistic missiles that Iran sent, could be fitted with nuclear warheads in the near future. So Israel has got to figure out a way not only to not look weak, but rather to establish deterrence, to make sure that Iran understands that they've crossed every single red line in the last 6 months, and especially this last week, and that Israel will pay a punishing price on Iran for any attack on its sovereignty on its home front.
Hamas, evil as it is and capable as it has shown, Iran is a much different threat. What do we know about their military capabilities as you bring up nuclear concerns?
Exactly. Hamas is the junior of the terror entities, terror proxies around Israel. The Houthis and Hezbollah, much larger entities, also staring down Israel with 150 to 200,000 rockets. But Iran, as we saw on Saturday night, launched 120 ballistic missiles at Israel. We saw the IDF spokesperson make a presentation today in front of one of these rockets. It was about 20 yards long, and it's been reported that some of these missiles had 500 kilometer payloads, half-ton payloads. Each one of those missiles could take out an entire city block, and they fired many of them, and they definitely tested the Israeli air defenses. And Israeli air defenses performed very well. But if they would overrun those defenses by shooting more than 100 at a time, perhaps they could get through. So very, very serious developments. Iran learned a lot of lessons. Israel learned a lot of lessons, and we have to see what happens now.
And are you hearing anything out of Iran, or is Israel remaining tight-lipped, but is Iran indicating any next moves?
Well, Iran has basically stated on Saturday night, from its perspective, that the attack, the counterattack, is closed. However, they have threatened Israel that if Israel will respond in any way, that they will respond in kind. They will respond with overwhelming force as compared to what they did on Saturday night, and they will do it within seconds. And they've also threatened to use weapons that they've never used before. So certainly alarming threats from Iran makes Israel have to think twice about what could be coming. But at the same time, Iran has to understand that Israel is the much stronger force here, that their military capabilities are much greater than any of Iran's, and that Israel has to put this war to bed. If Israel doesn't do anything now, it could stave off an escalation, but it would basically kick the can of an escalation down the road, because this war is going to happen at some point unless Iran's regime is taken out. And I don't see how that's going to happen anytime soon.
And Alex, how does all of this impact the planned offensive in Rafah, an attack on Rafah?
Well, I do believe that Israel wants to complete the planned attack in Rafah, but that situation is largely contained. It doesn't pose an immediate threat to the Israeli home front. So while Israel understands that they need to do that in order to finish off the remaining Hamas battalions, they're able to put this issue on pause in the meantime to consider how they're responding to Iran. If they choose not to respond, yes, I do believe they'll pivot back and try to begin the Rafah operation. If they're going to go towards Iran, what they need to do is make sure that their soldiers are ready, because a war with Hezbollah could be extremely likely, and they would need to pivot their military attention to that front with southern Lebanon.
Finally, what's happening at sea and the posturing from Israel's allies, the U.S. being one of them, in readiness? Of course, they have said they will not participate in any offensive attack, but what are we seeing right now in terms of military force from the U.S., Great Britain, France, and others?
Well, I think that they're saying that they will not participate in any counter strike in order to make sure that they protect their own interests, that Iran wouldn't retaliate against them if something happens. The United States was very clear that it did not participate in that strike in Syria last week against 7 of its generals in an annex to the embassy. But the United States has made clear, and they showed that on Saturday night, that they will be there to provide additional layers of missile defense to protect the Israeli home front. So while they don't want Israel to go on the attack, they do seem ready to protect Israel on the defense.
A wider conflict regionally, if not globally, is at stake here. Alex, as always, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Marnie.
All right, let's give you a live